What is up, guys? Pulse Panda here, and I have a couple things I want to talk about before we get started into the video. Like always, it's just a little bit of an introduction. First off, with my Steam card giveaway, Mr. Mason Gabriels, I don't know, won the drawing. Congratulations, Mason. I will be sending you an email later today with all the details and the Steam card number and whatever. Congrats. Otherwise, I have another thing. I'm going to start streaming. I know, it's super exciting. So a couple things to touch on that. I will be streaming from Sundays from noon, usually around for 5 hours, usually going to be Minecraft. I'm working on a new series for YouTube, and I'm going to stream it as well. I will be streaming on Thursdays from noon until 5, playing Dying Light until I beat it, or StarCraft 2, and usually Friday around 1 or 2 till 5 or 5:30, depending on school and stuff. I want to involve the viewers, but I currently don't have any games to do so. I'm willing to play with people if they have Dying Light, but for now I'm just getting into the mindset of streaming. I need to get used to it, get in the habit. The graphics are not awesome, I'm not gonna lie. My internet service provider is not fantastic, but they're not terrible. They're definitely watchable, and I personally rewatched every single one of the streams I've done so far, and I would watch them if I was during the time I would normally watch streams. I watch streams when I eat, so I would definitely have watched it, although that may be biased. And any donations and all donations will be going to improve the stream, primarily the internet speed for it. I do want to improve that. That's the only thing I don't like about it. I am a student, however, homework does come first. That's why Thursdays and Fridays are kind of like, it'll probably happen, but Sundays will definitely happen. I'm looking for support and feedback, so stop by. The rest of the details are at www.pulsepanda.com. Now, the game we have running in the background here, there will be two of them. They're pro games from the IEM, and they are TvP, and this is a TvP video. So let's just get into that. So in the TvP matchup, there's a lot going on, and kind of hard to cover everything about it, but I'm going to definitely try my best. So let's just kind of start with building placement. If you notice in this game, it's kind of like the same thing versus Terran. You don't want to wall off necessarily, because if they do early aggression, you're just going to flunder yourself. They can just get picked off, and oh, then what do you got? You don't have a barracks anymore. You don't have your supply depots, and that's never good. Another thing you do want to do is bunkering. Now the question is where and when to bunker. Usually you want to bunker either at the top of the ramp to your natural, or on the top of your ramp to your main, usually. And we're gonna touch when to bunker later. So, when you scout, let's get into scouting now. What are you looking for when you're scouting? Well, you're looking for a number of things. You're looking for the number of pylons that Protoss has down in their base, what Chrono Boost is being used for, how many gases they have, and obviously what buildings are warped in and are warping in. The question really is, when do you want to scout? Well, you want to scout. I personally like to scout with my first Reaper. I always do a Reaper fast expand. I always think it works out. It's just a fast way to scout, really effective, really nimble, and it heals, which is always a bonus. And you just hit the base once, just check out what's going on, count the pylons, figure out what's going on with the Chrono Boost, and usually just try and get some map control with your Reaper, see what's going on. Otherwise, because it is actually fairly challenging to double scout in most situations, because they'll have a mothership core. Otherwise, you can always scout with your SCV after you're done building your barracks. If it's a multi-spawn player map, like this one in the game, then I like to scout with an SCV a little bit earlier than that, just to make sure I hit the right base. Otherwise, you're just running around with a Reaper, and you're not going to know much. Now, as most people know, Protoss is able to proxy dark shrines and stargates and whatever, and it's really dangerous for any player that doesn't know what's going on. So after you look at the base, you kind of want to send your Reaper and just run around the map to just get vision and see if you can catch any probes out. If there's a probe chilling out, well, then it's probably going to proxy something, unless they haven't scouted you already. But 9 times out of 10 it'll be going to proxy something, and you want to find that out before it actually happens, because you're going to have a bad time if you... So where does a Protoss usually proxy? Well, normally they proxy at little weird corners of the map, and usually pretty close to your base, because that's the point of a proxy, to get stuff done fast. So if you look on this map, a Protoss could proxy on the base directly north of the Terran's base in one of those little corners there, and it would be actually fairly hard for the Terran to know where that is or find it. So that's actually a pretty common place to proxy. Otherwise, you know, stuff like that, little hidden or areas where you're not likely to find it using conventional methods. You actually have to look for the proxy to find it. And that's really important to know, otherwise you're going to just get screwed because you don't know where to look. So how do you react to what you scout? Now this is kind of a hard thing to talk about in any matchup. It's a lot of experience goes into it, as well as a lot of different variables. So these are kind of like the basics. This isn't like set in stone, but it's definitely a cookie cutout of what you should be doing. So if you scout and there's only 2 pylons by the time their stalker is out or around, then that means that they're missing a pylon, and it's probably going to be proxied. So find it with your Reaper, just scout all of them, just run around, check all the common places first, then just run around in circles with your Reaper until you can find it. And you want to get some turrets, because usually when a Protoss proxies, they're going to be going with Stargate first, which usually is Oracle, and you're going to want a turret for that. Or they're going to go with Dark Templars, which you're going to want a turret for that too, because they're spooky. And they are very strong. So you're going to want a turret at the front of your base, you're going to want one on each mineral line, you're going to want one, you know, around your base, so that way the Oracle can't just pick off like a tech lab or something, and, you know, that's never fun. If you see a mothership core when you scout with a Reaper fast expand, it usually means that there's going to be early aggression, but this does also depend on your rank, however. A lot of lower rank players like to just get mothership cores, but in higher ranks, I think the benchmark for that is around Diamond. They get mothership cores when they're going to be doing early aggression. So I would definitely prepare for that. If you see a mothership core when you're scouting with your Reaper, you're going to be wanting to put down a couple of bunkers. Gateway going down around the same time as a cybernetics core. Usually that means that they're going to be going with a 2 gate, and it just think early aggression, get bunkers, right? Or an early Templar archives, a Dark Shrine, or a Stargate. You're going to be wanting to get defense up ready too, because all of those things signal early aggression, right? Another thing to note about the Protoss is that they thrive on surprising their enemy with their technology. The more information about their strategy you can get, the better. For example, know when there's a Dark Shrine. If you don't know that there's a Dark Shrine, and they hit you with several Dark Templars, either in your base on your mineral lines, or in the middle of your army, and you don't realize it during a fight, you're going to have a really bad time. Dark Templars are very strong units, and they need detection. If you don't know that there's going to be some, you're not going to prepare with detection. So now let's talk about the Chrono Boost and explain it a little bit. Now again, this is, you know, comes with experience, but this is a good solid like base rule to follow. If you see a Chrono Boost on a gateway or nexus and it's building something like a mothership core, you gotta stick around and see if it's building the mothership core. It means that there's going to be gateway pressure 9 times out of 10. If you see that the Chrono Boost is going to be on a cybernetics core, there's going to be a multi-gateway attack. They're going to be using it to boost the warp gate, and then they're going to hit you with lots of zealots and stalkers. If you see it on the nexus and no mothership core happens, it's going to be macro, but check the other buildings just to make sure. And by macro, I mean they're going to expand. They're going to, you know, go heavy game. And make sure to click on the nexus when you're scouting to check the amount of energy. 1 Chrono Boost, remember, is 50 energy. If there's not a lot of energy, it's probably going to be an expand build. But why is this? Because they need the Chrono Boost for blink or upgrades. So without it, because they have low energy, they really should just expand. And this is the type of game that you want to be playing, because you can beat the Protoss in this situation. You just gotta play your macro. If he's currently chronoing, and you don't know what, because the Nexus will show you when it's chrono boosting something. There's an animation, it's fun. But you can't see any buildings that is being chronoed. It's probably going to be a proxied buildings, and you need to be prepared. You need to find it, you need to send up your defenses, you need to get some turrets. But before you do that, you have to make sure that it's not an expansion. Check the natural. Is there a Nexus there? Like, you know, you don't want to build up all those defenses just because you mis-scouted, right? And that's always a little bit unfortunate. How to tell if there's proxy? Well, that comes down to number of pylons. Like I said earlier, if there's only 2 pylons around the time there's stalkers being made, there's going to be a proxy. Remember, though, that people can expand with only 2 pylons. So check that out. Make sure to check out the natural. Be like, yo, hey, is there an expansion over here? If there's not, there's a proxy. So that's something to keep in mind. So because scouting the Protoss is one of the hardest things you can do in the game, I'm going to give a couple different situations and what they can possibly mean. So situation 1, you scout that he only has 1 gas. Well, with that, he can either do an expand or a multi-gate all-in, like a 4-gate, or do a hard gateway mothership core pressure. Knowing what he chronos can tell you which of these it is, and that was explained, a minute ago. If you scout that he has 2 gas, it can be a little bit more confusing, but just hang in there, I promise it'll work. It can still be a slower expansion and just planning ahead, so check for an expansion. But usually it's going to be a tech build all-in, or gateway pressure. Answering is the number of pylons and the Chrono Boost. If there's a lot of pylons, they're prepared with supply. If there's missing pylons, they're going to be hitting you with like a couple oracles or some Dark Templars or something, right? After you confirm the tech build from the example, 2 gases are taken and some chronos are saved. Usually the pylon is proxied. It'll either be a Stargate player or Dark Templars. So if the chrono is saved, right, it'll usually be Stargate or Dark Templars. But this also makes a huge difference if it's proxied. You want to know if it's proxied. Either way, get some turrets at the front, your mineral lines, and around your base. Do the scouting for the love of mercy. If it's not proxied, assuming you see all his pylons, and you see more than 1 stalker and a delayed mothership core, but a Twilight Council, he's probably going to go blink stalker all in, because he's using the gas that he would normally use for a mothership core on the Twilight Council and the blink. So, prepare with bunkers. You're going to want some bunkers on the high ground. Trust me. So now let's just briefly talk about units. So one of the big things that I see a lot of lower league players do is get siege tanks. Now this is painfully, horribly wrong. Never get siege tanks, please. Alright, now that I said that, that's not always the case. But usually you want to get Widow Mines, because Widow Mines do plus 40 damage versus shields. Well, what does that mean? What do you think that means? The Protoss only has shields, right? That's like half their health is their shields. If you look at their health bars, they actually do have less HP than like Marines and Marauders and stuff because of their shields. So if you can get some Widow Mine hits, like especially on Zealots, you're going to destroy them because of the bonus damage versus shields, right? And siege tanks do plus 10 damage versus armored. And that's not really usually something you want to be using against Protoss, because most of this stuff is the shields. The biggest issue with Protoss is the shields, so you want to have something to counter that. And getting a Raven isn't necessarily a bad plan, but it also depends. If you know that they're going to go with some Dark Templars, getting a Raven is not actually a bad idea. If you know that there's going to be some Oracles in your base, getting a Raven is probably better than getting a Scan, because it'll last longer and it'll be more cost efficient in the long run. And you can harass with a Raven. If you go in and you place one of your point defense drones, you're gonna last a lot longer in a fight than if you didn't have that. And if the Protoss goes mothership, a Raven's definitely gonna help you. In fact, you might want to get a couple, because they make everything cloaked. So Banshees are risky. As you saw in one of these games, the Terran player did go Banshee. But if you see that they don't have a Robo Bay, get a Banshee, because that's their detection. So they can either build a turret or build a Robo Bay and then build an Oracle. And either way, you're forcing them to do something they didn't originally have planned. Meanwhile, you're going to get a lot of stuff done. Same thing, if you see that they have a Robo Bay, they don't necessarily have an Oracle, right? So look and see if it's building anything. And then just go kill some workers and, force them to build an Oracle or something, Like, Banshees are definitely situational in this matchup, but at the same time, they can get a lot done. But usually, they're only useful when you're trying to draw his army away in mid-game or early game, to get him out of the game like that. Another great unit in this matchup is Reapers, but you don't really want to get a whole lot because you don't get them for the damage. Reapers are amazing for scouting Protoss, and I have a website blog about why you want to open Reaper Fast Expand in TvP, and it was all about how I opened with it and saved my butt because I was able to scout and find the proxy before he was able to do it, and I won the game because of it. And yes, so Reaper Fast Expand is almost always the build you want to go just for scouting, because the Protoss does such a great job with proxies and murdering people, and it's not very fun. Now, normally, most Terran players go bio. Well, that's because mech, in my opinion, sucks, so, I mean, bio only makes sense. But one thing to keep in mind is that bio is bad against Archons because they do splash damage, and Colossi, as well as carriers. Oh, and High Templars. Their storms are just terrifying. But, so there are counters to bio, but you can usually avoid them. And one thing to also mention is that Pult's Reaper Fast Expand focuses on getting only bio ever. Like, he never transitions. He just has so much bio he can just deathball the Protoss army repeatedly until they die. So that's definitely a legitimate way to play, and I would definitely look into that because that's probably one of my favorite builds of all time to do. Another last unit I want to talk about is the Vikings. In the previous fight you just saw, the Vikings kind of destroyed the Colossi, and that's really useful, but at the same time you don't want to get too many because otherwise you're going to be, you know, with a lot of Vikings, but they have Stalkers, and what are you going to do now? So yeah, you want to be careful with how many Vikings you get. I honestly don't even get Vikings, and neither does the Pult build I was talking about. They just kind of deathball the army until it dies. Alright, last thing I want to talk about is some brief tactics. A lot of people like to play by poking apart the Protoss by double dropping, like with 2 Minivacs and 2 bases at a time, and just target firing the pylons to get them supply capped and make their buildings no longer work. You kind of want to do this when you want to delay attack because you know you can't face the enemy because of either composition or size. And personally I like this method because the Protoss army can be devastating even in the best of circumstances and can just come out of nowhere and destroy you, so that's something to keep in mind. Otherwise, that's about all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to hit that like button, leave any comments, suggestions, concerns, complaints in the comment section below. Be sure to check out my live stream. I will be streaming, let's see, today's Monday. I will be streaming on Thursday, so definitely check that out around noon. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.